The SQ7 was launched in 2016, and that original car came with a 4-litre V8 twin-turbo diesel engine. Back in 2019, that particular car was facelifted, and Audi also introduced the SQ8. Both of those models retain that 4-litre V8 twin-turbo diesel unit. That particular engine really suited that car. Plenty of torque and about 430 horsepower. Fast forward a couple of years and, well, Audi have just released this. It's not a facelifted car, but it does have a completely different engine underneath the bonnet. Same sort of size, so it's a 4-litre, it's still a V8, and in fact it is still a twin turbo, but it's a petrol unit as opposed to a diesel unit. It produces 507 horsepower and 770 newton meters of torque. So although it is down in terms of torque, it's hardly lacking. It retains the brilliant tried and tested ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox. And obviously this also has Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive system. In fact, Audi claim this brand new petrol SQ7 will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.1 seconds. That's almost a whole second quicker than the older diesel variant, and we'll test that a bit later. Prices for this revised SQ7 start at £80,000 here in the UK. This particular press car is a Vorsprung model, which basically means it's the top trim level and comes with pretty much every available option. In fact, this one also has the retractable tow bar. This retails at about £98,500. The SQ7 does have a few styling tweaks over a regular Q7. So you have black sills, you have a more aggressive front end, black door mirror caps, slightly different looking diffuser around the back. Obviously you've got the quad exhaust pipes, which are kind of real. What I mean by that is there are real exhausts behind them, but what you see, those chrome 4 pipes out the back, are actually just covers, if you like, for the exhaust that sits behind it. Much better than the previous generation, or the diesel version before this, that had 4 completely fake exhaust pipes. The base spec SQ7 comes with 21-inch wheels as standard, and this Vorsprung version comes with these lovely 22-inch wheels. But it does still fly under the radar, and I really like that in any of Audi's S lineup. This being based on Audi's Q7, well, it has 7 seats, and that makes it very unique and different to something like the SQ8, which is only a 5-seater, and in fact very similar to BMW's X7 M50i that I had a couple of years ago. So I will be comparing it to that car, although this is a lot cheaper. It's about £17,000 or £18,000 spec for spec. Due to the exhaust system and the fact that this is an S model, the boot is slightly compromised compared to a regular Q7. So when the 7 seats are up, you're left with 295 litres of boot space. When the third row of seats are folded down, you're going to get around 700 litres compared to, I think it's 770 for a regular Q7. So still plenty of boot space, but just a slightly higher boot floor. Continuing on from practicalities, let's see if we can get a 6'4" Joe into the third row of seats. Although that row of seats is designed for smaller people primarily. We'll then try the seats directly behind me, and then I will jump into the driver's seat and talk about the cabin itself before taking it out for a drive. This isn't going to be particularly elegant, me climbing into the third row of seats, but let's just do it for science. So we need to fold down either one of the outside second row seats, and to do that it's quite easy. Pull this lever here and then push this down here and lift this up, and there you go. Now this is the tricky bit, and obviously for shorter adults or for kids this is going to be a lot easier, but let's just do it anyway. And once you're in, either you pull the seat down or someone from the front does the same. Well, as you can see, I'm extremely cramped back here, and yeah, I wouldn't want to spend more than about 10 minutes sitting back here. This second row, or this main bench, is on rails, and in fact it can all move independently, but I've put it in a position that allows me enough room to sit in the second row. So this is like how you would have your car laid out, if you like, and not compromise the second row or the driver and front passenger. There is a cup holder here, but unfortunately there's no USB ports or anywhere to plug your iPads in, and trust me, if your kids are back here for a long time, they're going to need their iPads or something to entertain them. Saying that, there's a reasonable view looking forward. It is nice the fact that this car, being the Vorsprung, comes with the massive pan roof that does induce some light back here. We have got independent reading lights, if you like, but otherwise, yeah, it's extremely basic back here, and these seats are very, very upright. Jumping into the second row of seats, well, it certainly feels a lot more familiar back here compared to right back there. I have my own window, I have my own vents. In fact, I have my own climate control down here with a heated seat. I've got some USB ports down there. I've got two very nice armrests. I've got some drink holders here. Everything is kind of what you would expect in an Audi of this sort of level. The seat is very comfortable, and in fact, these seats all recline as well. And as I mentioned in the very back row, this entire bench is on rails. So if there was nobody sitting back there, I could slide this seat further back, which would then give me a lot more legroom. The driver's seat is in my position, so it's pretty decent amount of space in here. And although I have got headroom here and I feel okay around my shoulders and arms, the actual seat back itself is just a little bit on the small side. And I actually discovered that a few years ago. I was looking to get myself a Q7 as a chauffeuring car, but these rear seats just aren't comfortable and luxurious enough compared to something like an Audi A8 or BMW 7 Series, Mercedes S-Class. They really do lack in that department. Jumping in the front here, well, it's typically premium Audi. We've got all of this touchscreen twin slab design, which I think looks amazingly beautiful, especially on camera, but in reality, as I've talked about so many times, it doesn't really work that well. And I hope that the next generation of the Q7, and in fact all Audis, go back to some buttons down here. But I'm not going to bang on about buttons because you're probably sick of me talking about buttons and my height and a few other things, so let's just gloss over that. In terms of driving position, well, it's actually very, very good. It's very comfortable, it's very adjustable. My one complaint though is these seats, and although I do like a lot of Audi's newer sports seats, like the S3 has got, even the e-tron S that I had recently, the sports seats that are in this Q7, ironically, are the smaller, older style ones. So when I sit in them, I'm just not supported at all. I feel like I'm sitting on them rather than in them. And there's just literally nothing. You couldn't get more of a different seat to something like the one that's in my brand new G80 M3 competition, where that just completely hugs you and you can't move anywhere. And you don't want a full bucket seat in something like this, obviously, but what I'm saying is these seats are definitely designed for the smaller person. So if you're 5'11" or slightly shorter, these would probably fit you reasonably well. But for the taller chap, I just feel like I'm moving around in them and they don't offer me enough support. They also don't come anywhere close to being a good headrest or head support, and I think that's almost verging on slightly dangerous. If I had a rear end collision or something, my head should definitely be more supported than it is in this particular seat. Firing everything up for the first time, well, that's a really nice, genuine, organic V8 rumble. Also, the way all this comes alive never really grows old. As much as it is a pain to live with and use sometimes, it does look very good, whether it's off or when it comes alive. This has also got the sports dash if you want. You can change the various layouts on Audi's virtual cockpit, and this model being a Vorsprung, I also have a very nice head-up display. So pretty much all the optional extras and toys I want are in this car, as you'd expect for 98.5 grand. I think we need to take it out on the road now and talk about what it's like to drive, because the sort of person that's looking at an SQ7 over a regular Q7 probably wants to know what it's like, how it feels. Is it actually any fun? Can you have a 7-seater that is enjoyable to take out for a drive on a Sunday morning? Let's go and find out. First things first, let's test out its acceleration figures. Audi claim this revised V8 petrol SQ7 will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.1 seconds. It does feel a little bit quicker than that. My race box is set up, ready to go. I'm in sports automatic and I've got all of the traction control devices switched off. Left foot is hard down on the brake, right foot on the accelerator, and here we go. Oh, it's so fast off the line, and there's 60. 3.82 seconons. That's insane. That this is a 7-seater. This isn't an RS model. And that's a full tank of fuel, and me on board, well, I'm fast approaching 110 kilos, so it's a very fair test. That's fast. Okay, so we know it's very fast in a straight line. I think off memory that's a fair chunk quicker than BMW's X7 M50i. Let's see what it's like as a normal Q7. Let's knock everything back using the drive select down here into comfort, the gearbox back into normal regular drive, and let's see how comfortable this is, what it's like as a daily, if you like, or a family wagon, because I'm sure someone who's buying this, that's the main priority. The second part to that is that it drives well dynamically, so we'll get to the dynamic driving a little bit later. The suspension, well, it's an air suspension, obviously adaptive, and when you're in comfort, it's really, really good. Audi are very good at that. The RS6 along this very piece of road with the air suspension in comfort is just amazingly smooth. Reminder, we're on 22-inch wheels, but you wouldn't know that. You'd think you're on 18s or 19s with a massive chunky sidewall, because the ride is just very pleasant. We've got double glazing glass everywhere, so there's hardly any wind noise or cabin noise, and as you know, it's very windy outside, but you wouldn't know it. It's just a very pleasant and lovely place to sit and cruise along in. Talking of cruising, well, even if you're cruising, you're not going to get much more than about 23, 24 miles to the gallon. And in fact, in the time I've had this car, yes, some of that has been spirited driving, but I've averaged 15.6 miles to the gallon, which is just ludicrous. But it has a fairly big fuel tank, and even with that sort of driving, I'm still getting around 400 miles out of a single tank, which is, well, twice of what you would get from Audi's e-tron S, which I also recently drove along this piece of road, and is actually very similar price to this Vorsprung SQ7. For my money, well, it would be this every day of the week, but if it's company car tax related or going along those lines, then your e-tron's going to cost you a hell of a lot less in reality. Being that it is a large 7-seater with a 4-litre V8, you would expect it to weigh a lot, and it does. It weighs about 2.2 tons. That's roughly 100 kilos less than its predecessor, the 4-litre V8 diesel. So it's saved around 100 kilos, and to be fair, 2.2 tons for a car of this size isn't actually too bad. An RS6 tips the scales at just over 2 tons, so you would expect this to be at least a couple of 100 kilos heavier. And for all that practicality, it really is a small trade-off. This doesn't come with active stability, so when you start pushing it through the bends, which we will in a minute, it doesn't stay nice and flat and level. But actually, being old school, I prefer that in a car. I can feel it talking to me more when there is a bit of roll, and it certainly doesn't feel too wayward. It doesn't feel too top heavy and swinging all over the place, because that wouldn't be very nice for your passengers, especially the ones right at the back. So it's still very stable and planted, but you do get some roll when you start pushing it harder into the bends. Right, let's put it into dynamic. A couple of clicks down here on the drive select, there we go. Straight into sports automatic. In fact, I'm going to put it over into manual. You can already hear a little bit more exhaust note. The car has stiffened up and it just feels sharper, which is crazy. I'm talking about 7-seater here, but it does feel a lot sharper. And this is where it becomes a bit of an animal. Yes, it's not quite an RS Q8, but we know from its acceleration figures it's not far off in a straight line. And the first time you put your foot down, it's just so fast and so firm. And it inspires you with confidence through the bends. It just isn't right. It shouldn't be doing this. I thought it would feel really lazy and lethargic once you start pushing it harder, but in fact it just deals with everything so well. It reminds me very much of Audi's S8, which has got a very similar ingredient. So it has that same 4-litre V8 twin turbo petrol unit, which is actually straight out of the RS6 and RS7. It is slightly detuned in this with a mere 507 horsepower, but I believe they're very healthy horses, and I wouldn't be surprised if you put this on a dyno, it's putting out 540, 550, because it's very, very fast. But in terms of its driving and handling dynamics, it's unbelievable. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that this car has 4-wheel steering. So at slower speeds, the rear wheels or the rear axle turns in an opposite direction to the front axle, and at faster speeds, the rear wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels. So it really makes the car shrink around you. It makes the car feel like it's a lot shorter in wheelbase than it is. Oh, I feel that's a thumping car. This car is unhinged, and just like the Audi S8, it almost deserves to have RS badges on it. It's every bit as good as some of the larger RS cars. It feels unbelievable. It's not just about straight line pace, and yes, arguably the 4-litre diesel that this replaces probably suits this car a little bit better and is more what you'd expect from the label and the tin, if you like, but this car is way better and way more exciting than I thought it was going to be. I really did not think of going down this bit of road with a grin on my face. It's a sledgehammer, but it handles the bends so well, much thanks to its 4-wheel steer and whatever they've done to the suspension and the setup. This chassis, it just feels brilliant. Yet it looks so relatively ordinary on the outside. Yes, it has bigger wheels, and yes, it does have bigger brakes, but you wouldn't walk around the outside of this car with any idea of what is beneath and how capable it really is. It's an absolute animal, and I love it for that. And yes, you are going to struggle to get to 20 miles to the gallon even on a long run. Just an epic car. I really, really think this is an awesome piece of kit. And when you consider that if you do strip away some of these options and you don't go for the Vorsprung model, you can get this for 80 grand. And I know that's a lot of money, but it's 2021. My M3 competition was 80 grand. So many cars are 80 grand, and something this luxurious this premium, 80 grand with those kind of performance figures, well, it makes an RS6 look kind of expensive. It makes the RSQ8 look very expensive because that only has 5 seats. So if you are looking for a rather ridiculous 7-seat premium car and you have 80, 90, 100 grand to spend, honestly consider one of these, especially if you want to fly under the radar slightly. If you took the SQ7 badging off this, it would be one of the best Q cars out there. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks as always for the support and watching all of my content. I will see you at the next video very, very soon. I'm just going to enjoy this last bit of road in this silly car. Take it easy.